The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. Welcome to it on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark is in. How did you lure Connor away from his newly moved into apartment? Bribery?
Bush
deception?
I just showed up.
Okay, good. Good to see you. And welcome to join us as well. Different ways to do that here on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240. Numbers to get in. Can also dial us up toll-free, 800-825-5865, wherever you hear us across the state. YouTube channel is there for you. The video stream, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Go there, or the Hail Varsity Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow and give us a check or a look-see that way. Can find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence. Can find Connor on Twitter at C_Clark_27. That's as many underscores as I'm going to talk about. Can find me, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. Matthew says I sound like a robot. That's not intentional.
Let me get that fixed for you.
Okay.
That should fix all of our problems.
Okay, so I am now muted, at least on the laptop.
Well, I had to do this thing where I turned off robot mode on our live stream. I don't know why they even include that mode in the first place, but we're fixed now.
Good.
And
awesome.
It's been normal for people listening on the air and via podcast form. It's just for the currently over 10 people. I assume that number is going to grow now that Schmidt doesn't sound like a robot. So we're all fixed. We're good to go. And we do encourage you, if you ever want to chime in and see our beautiful faces and hear Chris talk like a robot, the Hail Varsity YouTube page is where you go do that and join in on the live stream. Plenty of comments already in on the live stream.
I dance like a robot, but I try not to sound like one. Coming up on the show, Mitch Sherman joins us from The Athletic. We'll check in with Mitch on some Nebraska football camp drudges forward. Grant Wistrom, Husker Hall of Famer, College Football Hall of Famer. Grant will talk some Big Red with us. And then Tom Shatel also spend some time with us in hour two. Excited about that. Also, it's really cool for the state of Nebraska with the Lincoln East team, what they're doing, Carpet Land, as they are playing for a national championship tonight with Legion Baseball. They are on at 6 on ESPNU. Had a chance to talk with Coach Loddick earlier on KFOR locally. And we'll check in with a proud parent, Jeff Larson, going to be with us. He's out in North Carolina. His son Luke is playing, and we'll get the scene set for something that hasn't been done since 1939, and that's calling Nebraska a world champion when it comes to Legion Baseball. The Creighton Prep team of 1939 did it. A lot of buzz with this around the state, and good on Lincoln East for what they're doing and chance to win it all tonight. So we'll check in with a parent out there and root for Lincoln East. So
what's special about that East squad is they're down a couple of players in this tournament.
Three Division I.
Their three best players essentially are all playing the regional circuit,
money.
travel ball. You get out in front of the college scouts. The downside of that is you got to get away from your Legion team towards the end of the season to go and do those things. And they
should be able to do both.
I mean, through most of July and into August, they powered through losing some of their better players, came back stronger. I mean, it wasn't the Legion season they were looking for early, but they found a way to battle back. And now you got a chance at a national championship.
Yeah, and all three of the kids, one going to Michigan, two going to Nebraska, so Big Ten flavor with three of the players, but guys have picked it up, and they've been incredible this year. So let's get, before we hear from Matt Rhule, I get wore out by the uniform talk, quite honestly. I don't hate the throwbacks. It isn't for me, or the alternate uniforms. Again, it's not for me. It's for the players and for fans. But the tribute to the original jerseys, so a little bit of blue tinge to these jerseys. They look good. They look wonderful. It's the red. It's the white, but blue on the outline of the numbers. Ever so subtle, but it's a nod to that first uniform Nebraska wore when they kicked off against Oklahoma. Of course, Oklahoma being Oklahoma, they showed up to a road game wearing red or the maroon. So Nebraska that Saturday had to wear blue. Great job by Mike Babcock on the history of Memorial Stadium with NET that premiered and aired on Sunday night. Watch that thing. That was awesome. It was great to get caught up with Babbers that way. So, what do you think of them? Does it do much for you? Do you like them? Do you care? Because the alternate uniform discussion is always something that's fervent around here. I think the best alternate uniforms they've had, you go back to that year that Sue wore them. I think, I don't remember what year they were, but it was a tribute, and I think it might have been the 1960s teams. And I liked those unis the best.
They went back to the first year of the sellout streak, which I believe
62.
was 62, yeah. So they went back to that, and that was the style of jersey that they wore back in, I believe that was 08? Is that 08 that they wore those jerseys? Bo Pelini's first year. I always liked those. Also, the black shirt ones that got worn once under Scott Frost. Those are a beautiful alternate uniform. I wish they'd be the permanent alternate uniform so you don't have to deal with this year in, year out, because as you said, Schmidt, I've stopped caring. I cared whenever I was in middle school.
That's your cutoff line between junior high and high school.
I only care more when it's a big change. Like, this isn't a big change, right? There's a little bit of blue trim around the numbers. The uniforms look sharp, from head to toe, but it's really not that much of a change from the normal uniform. Now, say if they went to what they did 2 years ago against Buffalo with the all-white, or they do another black shirt iteration, then I'll probably care more if it's a major change. But this is just a very subtle thing honoring the past, which is cool. I have no problem with that, but it's not going to, keep me up at night that there's a trim of blue around the numbers.
And my favorite alternate uniforms have been the subtle ones. I mean, the black shirt ones is probably the least subtle of the subtle ones I like, because you change the whole uniform color, but it was still a Nebraska jersey, just happened to be black with the black shirt logo on the sleeve. You think back, that 62 throwback, it was Nebraska's uniform in 62. They changed the font on the numbers, but the jersey, for the most part, was still the same. The Oklahoma alternate, where you just changed the color on the face mask.
That was cool.
That was cool.
You added the stripes, too. Those were cool.
Yeah, you added the stripes back to the pants, which should now be back permanently.
Nice.
But yeah, the gray face mask was a beautiful touch. Those have been my favorite ones. This one might be a little too... I don't think anyone's going to notice him from TV or from the stands. You're not going to notice that light blue outline, and maybe that's the beauty of these, is that you'll be able to see it in the close-up pictures, but it won't change the viewing experience at home.
Someone tweeted out a picture of them, at a Kohl's or something a month ago, and they're like, why is there blue around the number? And I remember seeing that, and now they're out as the alternate, and now it all makes sense. But when I first saw that too, I was like, what? What does that mean? But here we are. I agree though, Elijah. I think the black shirt uniforms that came out in 2019, those are definitely the best. I have to correct you though, they wore them twice under Scott Frost. They wore them once against Illinois and once against Indiana.
Excuse me.
But the Illinois one I think was better because it was black jersey, black pants. It was all black.
Okay.
And I really dig that. I thought that was cool.
Oh, and how about the one that goes under the radar because of how subtle it was? The one that honored the 97 national championship team they wore back in 2017. One of the ones that was just a Nebraska uniform, except the numbers had this mesh look to them. Mm-hmm. Those were also awesome because, again, it's a slight departure from what Nebraska does, but it's a cool change of pace that, maybe a couple fans out there are going to go buy a jersey and send their money to the university at school, and it's not going to ruin my viewing experience like a big old block N on the chest or reflective numbers that you can't read.
The Scrabble game.
The 2017 season ruined the experience. It wasn't the alternate uniforms. Let's talk Matt Rhule and his post-practice report as Nebraska continues to get ready for Minnesota, and some feedback, some reaction from Coach Rhule. And first thing out of the gate, how's this week been? How difficult is it? Because you're still in camp mode. You're not quite yet, we don't think, to Minnesota prep mode, probably next week. So still fundamentals and tackling. And it was open to the media this morning. Here's Coach Rhule on how, so far so good this week has been.
The challenge has been to not try to get through it, right? To try to get better. The days start to pile up on you, obviously, but when you look at it on the flip side, there's not many days left to practice before 8:31. So, we better remain a very humble team, and if we want to be confident come game time, we have to earn it right now. So, there's the added distraction of being home, being out of the dorms, and all those things. And I think our guys have maintained good focus so far. So I've never questioned this team's work ethic. They work. So far it's been pretty good.
So I like hearing that. You have this rallying cry, fellas. It's not remember the Alamo, but it's 8:31. I mean, that is that's the goal. Be ready, be capable by the 31st of August when Nebraska kicks off. So there's been a lot of talk about red zone. There's been a lot of talk about philosophy, and there's been more thoughts on Jeff Sims from a turnover standpoint. Can he correct that? What's the right balance of letting it rip versus being conservative or at least cautious enough to not get out of the red zone without points? Nebraska's been a struggling red zone team for a while going into this year. And then there's the reality of Nebraska's needed their backup quarterback every year forever, it feels like. And one thing you got to feel all right about here is what Coach Rhule's telling you, that he's confident in what Nebraska has behind Sims should they need him.
Yeah, we can win. We can play and win with Chuba or Heinrich. We get a lot of reps here, and those guys are playing really good football. Chuba's made just massive strides. And I think probably a lot of it just has to, new coaching staff was trying to prove a lot in the spring, and I think he settled down and just played football. So he's been excellent in the passing game. He can really run, and Heinrich's passing ability is really developing, getting through progressions, understanding protections, seeing the field. So I think both guys have had a really good camp. Both guys are dual threat quarterbacks. They can both run and throw. They're both 4-5 guys. So they give us a lot of flexibility. And then Luke Longhole's here with us. And Luke, we just had a threes live scrimmage at the end of practice, and he did a great job. He knows the system. He knows the scheme. So we have 4 guys that we feel like can go out and execute for us.
Guys, I don't think it's been an issue of do you have talent that's usable in Harburg or Pretty. It's what's their preparation been like and what have you asked them to do in past seasons. I feel better if I'm a Nebraska fan that these guys are ready and should they be called upon, they'll be asked to do things that can play to their strengths.
Yeah, and their strengths, what is it going to be right now? We know it's going to be first and foremost from these 3 guys with how they want to run this offense, at least from what we've heard. It's going to be running the football. I mean, Rhule talks about, they're doing well with their throws, making their progressions, but they're 4-5 guys, and we want them to use their athleticism and use their legs. And that's what it comes down to. That's what we've talked about many times on this show. Whenever Nebraska has knocked a starting quarterback out of a game for whatever reason, the backup's got to come in. How many other teams look like they have a competent plan in place for their backup quarterback?
They get lit up by the backup.
Yeah, because the other coaching staff has a plan in place for how they want to bring those starter or those backups to the forefront, utilize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses. It's the same thing we've talked about with utilizing freshman wide receivers within the past couple days. How do you game plan knowing that these guys are going to get some play time to say, we're going to show your strengths to the opposition. We're going to try to hide your weaknesses because we know those better than the opposition does. That's what Nebraska's faced in other teams' backup quarterbacks. And now the question comes down to, is Nebraska going to be able to pull out a competent game plan for a guy like Chuba Purdy or a guy like Heinrich Harburg in order to bring their strengths to the forefront whenever they do come into the game? Also, a quick side note here on Luke Longvall, who Matt Rhule mentioned there at the end of that cut. Where is number 29 at the quarterback position? We'll see if that number ends up getting changed, but he's the JUCO transfer. Interesting if he's a guy that's going to be on that travel roster for Nebraska wearing number 29. That's interesting. But JUCO transfer, and my buddy Graham, who we talked about the other day, the one that was branded at youth group.
The youth group branding.
That is
discussion.
so out of context for people who did not hear that story.
Anyway, he actually had a job interview down in the Georgia area a couple weeks back, and the guy was like, "Oh, hey, you're from Nebraska. You know my nephew, Luke Longvall? He's on the Husker football team." So
no, I don't, but you want to see my freaking brand? I got this in, the old church summer camp.
Well, I was my buddy Graham was like, do you know who that is? Because I didn't know who the hell that was. And I went, I think he's the transfer in from JUCO wearing number 29.
But I got Brandon when I was 15. That will never go away.
Oh, man.
So let's talk offense and specifically the offensive response by Nebraska. Rhule kind of, I don't want to say walked back criticism, but coming away from this weekend, you're like, oh, dear God, where's the offense going to go? But sounds like they're finding some stability there.
Yeah, I think maybe I probably said it wrong after the scrimmage. My issues with the scrimmage were the procedure stuff. Like, the football was pretty good. You know, they played good football. The pass protection was the best it's ever been. It's just, you know, we ran into a phase of, like, we spent so much time getting reps and less time sort of you guys have been, well, you guys haven't really been on there. We spent a lot more times with multiple fields going. We haven't spent probably enough time yet coming off the sideline, subbing off the sideline, all those different things. So that was sort of a little bit of a wake-up call, but that was all procedural stuff. In terms of the actual football, I thought it was good, you know. So I'm pleased with where we are. As I told the team, you're right where they're supposed to be. Like, there's, you know, just if the defense plays well, you know, I'm the head coach. If the defense plays well, it means the offense didn't play good enough. If the offense plays well, it means the defense didn't play good enough. So, but yeah, I think the offense is playing good football. They just had a little more urgency in terms of running on and off the field. So, you know, sometimes players will say things. You know, I heard Jeff yesterday kind of, you know, hey, we're a little sluggish. It's really just more about running on and off the field and getting in the huddle and getting out of it. So I think the football was fine.
Well, there you go. We'll dive into the red zone. I just got a text message on point. Junior keeps inundating me with Audis. Dad, get me an Audi. Junior, get a third job.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Cotter Clark. We'll check in with the Lincoln East baseball team here in about 15 minutes as they are out in North Carolina. Grant Wistrom next hour. We say hi to Mitch Sherman at Mitch Sherman on Twitter with The Athletic. Mitch, how's your Tuesday? Thanks for the time.
Going well. How's your Tuesday?
We're good, man. We are good, and a lot to get to is another day at camp for Nebraska. Coach Rhule spoke, and I want to start off, Mitch, with how do you think Nebraska is going to make their money in the red zone? Let's go there. There's been a lot of talk about the red zone, and Nebraska's not exactly been a great red zone team. I think that's an emphasis for Coach Rhule and this staff here for 2023.
Well, number of different ways. I think you're going to look at, number one, QB run game with Jeff Smith. I think that's a place where they want to use the QB run game is in the red zone. He's a big guy, falls forward, and he's going to get 2 yards. You know, it's going to depend, obviously, on the situation. You know, if you're first and goal from the 4, I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. If, you know, it's first and 15 from the 20, probably not. I think they're going to lean on Anthony Grant, Gabe Irvin as guys who can move the chains from the running back position. I think Nebraska feels like it's strong on the interior position, especially of that offensive line with Ben Scott as the lead guy in the middle, and then what looks like Ethan Piper and Nuri Nuili at the guard spots alongside Ben Scott, and then I think they're going to look to the tight ends. You know, notice I didn't mention the wide receivers. I think that's the weakest point right there of Nebraska's red zone potential, but they're going to look at the tight ends, and I think both Borkature and Thomas Bodoni are guys they feel like they can lean on to score touchdowns.
Early in the season, Mitch, do you think that driving into the red zone, getting a field goal, that could be a moral victory? Because we expect usually whenever there's new offenses installed at a school or in a program that it's going to take a while for that offense to really mesh together and find its footing. Do you think that field goals will be a success, or will that be something that you look back on and bemoan in games like Minnesota and games like Colorado because of how much pressure might already be on that defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a situational thing. I mean, if it's a game where points are at a premium, then, you know, absolutely, it's much better than giving it up on downs or you know, missing a field goal. You hope that at least you're going to get an opportunity to attempt a field goal. If it really goes awry and you commit a turnover or lose it on downs, then that's obviously worst case scenario. No, I mean, by and large, I think I would say no to that. And I think if you ask Matt Rhule and Donovan Raiola and Marcus Satterfield about kicking field goals when they're in the red zone, they're going to say they want to score touchdowns. And that's, you know, what any coach is going to say. I don't think it's any different this year because this is a first-year coaching staff. They want to score touchdowns if they get inside the 20-yard line. You know, field goals are for when you have it third and 8 at the 30, and then you feel good about a field goal, but not not once you get in the red zone. You want 6.
Mitch Sherman is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. So when you're talking about Nebraska getting into the red zone, do you expect them to be more aggressive? Say it's, a 4th and goal within the 5. I mean, are you going to be shocked if they end up going for it, or do you think that they'll just have the more conservative approach with that new offense being installed?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but again, it's situational, and it depends on the time of the game. If it's the first quarter, you're more likely to take a risk, and it depends on how your defense is playing and what's the tone of the game, what are the weather conditions. How do you feel like the other team is set up? Are they going to score 40 points, and 3 really isn't going to help you? I think there are times where Matt Rhule is going to want to be aggressive. I think he's going to practice what he preaches, and for him, it's to be aggressive. It's to go for the throat. It's to play with confidence. I think he's going to want to show confidence in his team. 4th and 5 might be a bit much, but if it's 4th and 2 or 4th and 1, and they feel like they can get yards on the ground, then I think they're going to go for it. I don't think you're going to see them on 4th down throwing fade routes into the corner of the end zone. Certainly not with the guys that they have right now, today, at wide receiver. And, even if Marcus Washington is back and he's healthy, which, has not been the case at any point in preseason camp. He's still on the sidelines today. If you have Marcus Washington and you have Billy Kemp and you have Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, I don't know that any of those guys are the player that I want to throw a fade to in the end zone, which is, generally what you do if it's 4th and 5. If your tight end's not there, you're looking for a pass that you just have a chance to outcompete the defensive back to get. And that receiver is just probably not on Nebraska's roster. Or if he's on Nebraska's roster, it's somebody like Malachi Coleman, who is still has some time to put in before he's ready to be put in that kind of a pressure moment.
Mitch, you kind of led this whole conversation off here by talking about Jeff Sims and his effect in the red zone. In those big-time moments, as you kind of laid out, 3rd and 2 from the 2-yard line or 4th and 2 from the 2-yard line, and you need 7 or 6, you're going to put the ball into the hands of your best playmaker on offense and let them go out and do what they do, which is go make a play. Is Jeff Sims the playmaker for this offense this year, or do you think there's an argument to be had to, 4th and 2, we want to give the ball to Gabe Ervin because he's a wrecking ball? How do you see that going whenever, it's late in the game, Nebraska's down by 6 and they need a touchdown?
Yeah, you don't want to be predictable, and I don't think they have a guy in Jeff Sims where it's like, going way back in Nebraska history, like Eric Crouch, where, in his Heisman year or even in the couple years before that, where you just know that he's the guy who's going to get the ball because he's got the ability not just to have the speed to outrace somebody to the pylon. He can also make a guy miss, or he can make a pitch. It's so dynamic that you're silly if you're calling the plays and you don't put it in his hands. They're not at that place right now with Jeff Sims. Maybe they will be. Maybe he'll prove to be that player in September, and by the time they get to the end of the month and it's Michigan, it's the best team on your schedule, you just give it to them and see if your best can beat their guy. And in some cases you're going to lose, and it's better to lose by going down with your best. At the start of the year, I think it'll be some Sims when they're in that spot. I think it'll be some Ervin and Grant. Not sure what order right now. I think snap 1 of the game, it's going to be Gabe Ervin lining up in the backfield with Jeff Sims. But I think as you get into a game, it's just as likely that Anthony Grant's going to be the guy that you put in there when you need yards as it is Gabe Ervin. And then I'll go back to Fedoni and Billy Kemp. Those are the other 2 guys right now that I look at and say, if you've got to make a play, find a way to get those guys open on a route and just put the ball there for them to get.
Mitch, let's talk about Fedoni. He was able to talk after practice today, and he's had his share of at least video clip highlights in some of the footage that's been released. And what are your expectations here? What kind of year do you think Fedoni can have? And I really enjoyed his comments after practice today. The guy's just kind of always on, and I have no doubt when you talk about guys that love the game, his mannerisms and just his grind is very real.
I think he eats footballs for dinner, so that's
well put.
He's the kind of guy who comes across like that, and Thomas always has been. That's the vibe that I've gotten from him since I met him in his junior year at Lewis Central and Council Bluffs, and that's why it's been difficult to watch, just because the anguish that he's in, not physically, but just the the difficulty that it's been for him to go through 2 years. An early enrollee gets hurt his first spring, comes back, gets onto the field for a couple of snaps at the end of the year in his true freshman season, works through the spring, gets hurt again. It was interesting today to hear Matt Rhule talk about that injury, the re-injury of Thomas's knee in the spring of 2022. And I was a little taken aback because he described the play. Like he described it, and this was in practice. He described the play in practice. So Rhule did. So we've heard about Matt Rhule and how he watched all of the practice film from last year, the season before he got to Nebraska. He also watched the spring, it seems, before he got to Nebraska. So that I think tells you a little something about the head coach. But to talk about Fidone, he's I think there's going to be some rust to knock off. And I asked him about that today, and he said not really. He's not going to admit, and he probably doesn't even think right now about that. He feels good when he's out there on the practice field, and he looks good when you see him run around and when you see him in the videos. He's probably been the one guy featured more in Nebraska's social media videos than any player on this roster since January. And that speaks to how this coaching staff feels about him, because Rhule and the people in charge, the personnel people at Nebraska, they have say in who the school features on its social media. So it's not just by coincidence that, guys like Thomas Fidone and Billy Kemp and Jeff Sims and Isaac Gifford and Luke Reimer just continue to show up on that list. I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Fidone is one of the next group of players who ends up getting a single digit, just because of the respect I think that he's earned, not just this year, the calendar year 2023, from his teammates in fighting back, but in everything that he's done to come back from 2 injuries since he first got to Nebraska. So my expectation for him is that he's going to come along like in a gradual process through the year. And by the time Nebraska gets into October and gets to midseason, as long as he stays healthy, which he's on track to do, I think he can have a pretty big year. I could see him having 35 or 40 catches this year, up over 500 yards.
Mitch, whenever we hear the coaching staff talk about how much they want to utilize the tight end position, let's briefly hit on the other tight end in that room that I'm expecting us to see plenty of this year, and Nate Borkacher. And this is with Gilbert and his waiver kind of being up in the air right now. With Borkacher, we got to look at him at the a look-in series last night, a bit of a deeper dive into who Nate Borkacher is on and off the field. And I want to get your thoughts on what type of potential he has this year. Do you think this could be a coming out party for Nate Borkacher from walk-on to potential starter this year?
Yeah, I think he's Mr. Reliable. Like, he's the guy who going into the season more than anybody at that position. You know what you're going to get from him. And don't forget about Janarin Bonner at that spot too. I think he has a role, although he's more of a hybrid tight end and can play. They can flex him out at receiver. He can play fullback, but Borkacher is just a traditional tight end. He's going to be instrumental in the run game. He's going to be a guy like you've seen, I think, out of Nebraska tight ends in the past. So you just wonder how he always gets open, because he's going to run good routes. He's going to know the offense. He's not going to misdiagnose something and end up costing Nebraska an opportunity. If it's there for him, I think he's going to get to the ball and get open and make the catch. I don't envision him with the same kind of explosiveness and maybe the same kind of numbers when it's all said and done that Thomas Fidone has. He's not the same kind of freakish athlete that Fidone is, but he doesn't take a backseat to anybody in that tight end group with what the coaches expect from him on a day-to-day basis, and he has good size. So, kind of like Travis Vokolek in the past couple of years, who has just been reliable and doesn't drop balls. I think that's what Borkacher brings.
Mitch will get caught up again as Minnesota is just around the corner, and appreciate you jumping on. And we're up against it, but we'll talk next time about the Big Ten kind of State of the Union you wrote. Check that out from Mitch on The Athletic. Really does an excellent job running down the Big Ten and the different tiers. Mitch, appreciate your time today, bud.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, there he is, Mitch Sherman with us. Find him on Twitter at Mitch Sherman. We'll head to North Carolina, talk some American Legion World Series.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Grant Wistrom coming up in about 20 minutes. Let us head to North Carolina as a natty on the line tonight for Lincoln East, Carpet Land, American Legion. We say hi to a proud parent of Luke Larson. Jeff Larson joins us. Jeff, you're you're all set up, man, and it's game time here at 6 on ESPN, ESPNU. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great, Chris. It's been awesome here. Everybody's treated us great. Can't wait for the game tonight. The boys are doing a great job.
No, they are, and let's talk journey between not only taking state and then, making it through different regionals and then advancing to this opportunity. You've coached a long time in your career, I know, and you've been a part of some kids, and you've watched a lot of this team grow up together.
I have, and just to see the camaraderie amongst the boys and how much fun they have, whether that's on the bus, at the hotel, or especially on the field, they're all pulling for each other, rooting for each other. They got each other's backs. It's one of the neatest things I've experienced, whether it be as a parent or a coach or just watching from a distance. You can just tell they all really love each other.
So Jeff Larson with us here talking Carpetland Lincoln East baseball as they play in the national title tonight. And Jeff, tell me a little bit about what this summer season has been for you guys, because it's felt from the outside looking in like a tale of two halves to this season, where you have May into June where this team hadn't quite hit their stride, and then the calendar turned over to July. I believe there was a trip out to Cincinnati, and the team's really been on a tear ever since then. How has this team developed throughout the summer season, leading them to a point where they can play in a game of this magnitude?
Well, it's been a wild spring and summer. I think Coach Lonick said this is our 100th game for these boys. It's hurt my pocketbook, I can tell you that much. And I've missed a lot of work. I might be on a milk carton at my office at some point, but I tell you what, all the trips, all the time they've spent together, I mean, it's just been a ride, a great ride at that. And you're right. Once we hit Cincinnati, the boys just really locked in and hit their stride this summer. And they've just, when they lose a game, they'll come back and run off 10, 12, 13 in a row. They just really do not like to lose. And I think they might dislike losing more than they actually, enjoy winning. They refuse to lose, and it's a pleasure to watch.
Jeff, you mentioned the pocketbook, bud. Now you have the chemistry and camaraderie with the team. It's also important with the parents. How much recycling work have the parents done? How's the parent group?
Parent group is great. We always get together, typically before and after games. Like Cincinnati, I partnered up with Butch Peltz, and we rented a rental car. We went through a different app, and we were driving around in a tinted out black Escalade, and people thought, who are these guys? But we've
good old Butch.
Done a lot of things. Yeah, we've done a lot of things together, and just had an outstanding time. I mean, we were in Cincinnati during the Taylor Swift 2-day concerts, and we went to a Reds game. We were eating on the river. I mean, it's just been for these boys and the parents, just the time of our lives.
Now, Jeff, you said that, this team, once they win, they just keep winning. And I believe I saw yesterday they won with having one hit. So how do they keep pulling these out in late game situations and be able to come through in these high pressure moments?
It's remarkable because, yesterday we won with getting one hit. And I've never seen that before. I can't recall seeing that. But they found a way. And, we won Legion State, our part of the state, 12-11. So that was a game where the hitting really carried us. And yesterday our pitching kept us in the game. And then Garrett Springer had that huge 2 RBI hit in the 6th inning to give us the lead. And I just took a deep breath at that time because I thought, with Connor coming in, I thought, we got this. And so they just keep finding ways. That's all I can say. It doesn't matter if it's pitching, hitting, on the base pass, they'll just find a way.
Jeff Larson is with us. He is live. We're streaming him. He has some camera work being done. I mean, the backdrop of the fields there in North Carolina is Carpetland, American Legion going for a national championship. They take on Texas tonight, 6 o'clock, ESPNU. And there's friendly rivalries in the city of Lincoln. There's friendly rivalries in the Omaha metro region. You have central Nebraska, western Nebraska. There's a lot of incredible talent in this state. How's it feel to have rivals pulling for you? I mean, that speaks. It's bigger than just a team on a nice run. I mean, there's so much respect for this program.
Yeah, you would not believe how many teams, whether it's from Nebraska, even some of the teams that we played at regionals, who have reached out to us, showing their support, pulling for us. I've got friends and coworkers back home having a watch party in downtown Lincoln
awesome.
tonight. I mean, the best part about it being on ESPNU is I don't have to explain to my parents how to stream ESPN3.
That's pretty good.
Jeff, do you have any, I don't want to look too far ahead here, but do you have any plans in Shelby tonight should the boys bring it home? If they win the game tonight, do you guys have any plans for celebration either between the parents or between the parents and the team?
No, I think we'll just all go back to sleep. No, we probably will find something to do. I know we all have flights early in the morning to get back. The boys are, school started, so we're all flying back tomorrow. I don't think my flight's till 12:30, so there may be I may need another bin for recycling in the hotel room tonight. So.
Yep, that fits for summer travel ball parents, doesn't it? Need to stay
Yes,
hydrated. Need to stay
That's
hydrated.
right.
So we talked with Coach Lonick this morning. Kind of reset it for us though. Who's on the hill tonight for East, and who's got a hot bat right now? You can tell us about. We got about 90 seconds.
Well, Carter Mick's going to start on the mound. He's been our ace all season. He's pitched, in the spring state championship game. Carter's the guy. He's going to get the ball tonight, and we're going to ride with Carter. He's been great all season and well-deserved. And I'll tell you, he's just a great kid. Always got a smile on his face, eager to talk to anybody and everybody, really supportive of his teammates. In terms of the offense, Garrett Springer's been swinging a really, really hot bat. AJ Vasco's been swinging a hot bat. And then, the rest of the guys, Ty Berkey from the leadoff spot has been getting on base. And then you got, everybody's contributed. All the kids have been doing a great job, and we're ready to go and looking forward to it tonight.
Well, best to you, Jeff, and the folks of East. Carpetland, American Legion, vying for a national championship tonight to ESPNU, 6 o'clock. Check that out at East Spartans BSB. It's where you can follow on Twitter. And there'll be a bunch of smiling folks around 70th and A, and really just a proud moment for not only the city of Lincoln, but just Nebraska baseball in general. Jeff, get that recycling hat on. You guys go get it done tonight, all right?
Will do. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, bud. There he is, Jeff Larson. Right. Appreciate him. Good to spend time. We'll wind down hour one. Hail Varsity continues. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Just saw on Facebook, you just talked to Jeff Larson out in North Carolina as Lincoln East goes to try and win that American Legion National Championship. Really a celebratory moment for the state of Nebraska with Legion baseball. But our friends at Rosie's having a watch party.
Awesome.
So that's really cool. I may need to go hydrate, but if you're a parent or a grandparent, travel baseball is pretty intense, and the chemistry is so important, not only with the kids but the parents, and they're soaking it up. It's really cool.
If they bring it home, I know Bud Crawford got a parade in Omaha last week. I think those kids deserve a parade through downtown Lincoln at some point this fall.
That's fun. I can imagine old Butchie Peltz and Mr. Larson rolling through Cincy in an Escalade that's tinted. And maybe getting lost, so that's pretty good. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law. If you're confused about your options with your workers' compensation claim, be sure to put your trust in the team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. Call Dyer Law and the team today at 1-888-DYER-LAW or visit dyer.law to chat with a trusted professional about your workers' compensation claim. That is dyer.law, Dyer Law. Easy to do, and they'll make sure your options are covered and that they follow through with you and that worker compensation claim. 489-1240, numbers to get in. I want to catch the show or get caught up with it. Easy to do multiple ways. Podcast is Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the audio portion, the full show or the interviews you want to hear. That's available. Can watch the entire show on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Check that out and give the radio Twitter a follow at HVarsity Radio, KFOR Facebook and Twitter as well, where you go. And we're loaded up for hour two. More thoughts on Nebraska. We'll get perspective from a legendary black shirt and three-time national champion, a Super Bowl champ, a member of the Nebraska Football and College Football Hall of Fame. Grant Wistrom will get us kicked off in hour two. Tom Shatel, also a little bit more on Nebraska and that red zone emphasis. Guys, Nebraska, and we'll have some more thoughts from Coach Rhule as well in hour two, but Nebraska is, I think, in position to put their money where their mouth is. They want to be big. They want to be physical. They want to be tough in the Big Ten. It's going to be vital for them to be good at running the football inside the five. And you have a dual-threat quarterback. That gives you an advantage. You have a big dual-threat quarterback in Sims. That's nice, but you got a stable of backs behind him. And as Mitch Sherman pointed out, that A-gap, that interior center guard could be pretty big for Nebraska to get it done. I mean, it's going to – I'm already thinking my wheels are turning for Minnesota. It's going to be a party up there, going to be a ton of fun. But I do believe points will be at a premium.
Yeah.
Just with the defenses and how big and physical and tough it's going to be. It's going to be turnovers, and what do you do in the red zone?
Well, and that's kind of why I asked Mitch about that question of field goals. Could they be a win early in the season? Just because I do believe points are going to come at a premium. That's how it's going to go. Typically for a coach starting at 10, you're trying to install a new offense. Hey, 21 might get it done in your first week of the season.
Well, Rhule wears out situational football in a good way, and that's something Satterfield talked about earlier in the week. Hour two coming up. It's Hail Varsity Radio, and Grant Wistrom with us here in about 10 minutes.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency, College Football Hall of Famer, national champion, multiple times over, Super Bowl champ. We say hi to Grant Wistrom. Love getting Grant's take as camp is drudging on at Grant Wistrom on Twitter. Grant, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, Schmitty. How you doing, man?
We're good. First day of school for Junior, and we got shaken down over the weekend with school shopping. Are you strict on that budget-wise with the kids, or do you just kind of let them pick out what they want and make them chip in?
So my son goes to a really small private school, and so he gets to wear shorts and a T-shirt. And he would not care anyway. He would just wear whatever's in his closet. And my daughter dresses like she wears her pajamas to school every day. She's going to, you can be a junior this year, and so really back at school shopping clothes-wise budget isn't a deal for us.
That is good. Were you
yeah.
Were you a guy in high school that was brand centric, or did you just kind of wear whatever?
I wore whatever my mom bought me.
Yeah.
And my mom is a fairly frugal person, so brands weren't really ever part of our. It just wasn't a part of what we did, and more than like, I had a better chance of getting and actually did get a shirt with somebody else's initials monogrammed on the cuff that they'd returned at the secondhand store to wear to school than a Nike T-shirt. Yep. So that was pretty much how we were raised.
It works out. I remember wanting a pair of Guess jeans. You know, well, hey, relax, dude. It was, and before you ask,
Grant, the Z Cavaricis?
No, I didn't do the Z. I didn't do the Z, but I got a pair of Guess. But before you ask, yes, they were the husky size. But they got taken back because Papa Bear was like, "What in the hell did we just we spent what on jeans?" So they lived in the house for about 4 minutes before they got sent back. So I had to get a little back to school love in there before we move on to football. But how are you feeling, man? You're a proud Husker. It's year one of Rhule. The guys are slamming around, and it's been a pretty physical camp. It sounds like.
Yeah, no, that's exciting to hear. I'm done drinking Kool-Aid. So that's exciting to hear. I would love to have a great season, but and it sounds like they're doing things the right way, but just cautiously optimistic.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Kool-Aid for a second. I mean, it's been so much turnover the last 2 decades. Is there a year of Kool-Aid that hurt worse than others?
I think the last with Scott there, the past years with Scott there were the worst, the hardest, just because there was such open optimism. One of our own was back in charge. He knows what it needs and said all the right things, but man, just didn't get it done on the field. Mm-hmm. So that was the hardest one.
It's Grant Wistrom with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Grant, as we look ahead to Rhule, what have you seen from him that gives you confidence? I know you say you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, so I'll be careful with this answer, I guess. But whenever you look at Rhule, I guess what reminds you of your time at Nebraska, and what gives you some confidence that he has the right keys in place in order to bring Nebraska back to where it rightfully should be in the grander landscape of college football?
I don't know other than what is put out on Twitter. That's
Sure.
My only source of information. And just the players are saying the right things. He's saying the right things. So I don't have any firsthand information. You guys know a heck of a lot more than I do. But it just feels good. It feels like somebody with a blue-collar attitude is back calling the shots.
And from an eye test point of view, Grant, whenever you look ahead to the season, what are you going to be watching for to see if Nebraska is well on its way? Because we've talked enough on this show about the fact that the expectations this year aren't Big Ten championship game or bust. It's very reasonable. Go make a bowl game, go get above 500. So what are you going to be watching for in a potentially 6-6, 7-5 season to see if this thing's on the right path?
I think the line play. I think it's been so soft the last couple of years that the line play is going to be a real indicator whether we're trending in the right direction. And that'll show early on. Are the guys going to fight? Are they going to scrap? Or are they going to go out there and, we're down by 5 in the fourth quarter. Are they going to pack it up? Are they going to finish a game? Are they going to go out there and play for each other? And just seeing the energy and the effort on the field, that doesn't take a year or two to fix. That can be done right away. And I just think that will show pretty quickly, whether we're headed in the right direction.
Well, Grant, one of the messages that Coach Rhule has been relaying on his players is greatness happens at the end. And that's something that we really haven't seen over the course of the past couple of years with Nebraska football. And as a former player yourself, I mean, how much truth to that is there when Coach Rhule is saying, hey, greatness happens at the end, you must be ready for it?
I think there's a lot of truth to that because everybody can be front runners coming out of the gate strong, looking good. But when you get hit in the mouth, and it's the fourth quarter, that's when the cream rises to the top and the greatness really shows itself. So I get I've never really heard that expression before, but I understand what he's saying.
Grant Wistrom's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. A few minutes with Grant at Grant Wistrom on Twitter. And, Grant, I look back to your time in Lincoln and kind of the mentality that it took to play early like you did. And I want to just kind of get your take on what hit you in the mouth, what toughened you up, and how you were able to develop. You were good, obviously, but You also you didn't start right away. You played a lot, but didn't start right away. But your seasoning, development's a big focal point here with Coach Rhule.
Yeah, and for me, I was going to make them force their hand, because at the time, Coach Osborne didn't play freshmen. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, I am going to go out there. I'm going to fight everybody I have to fight. I'm not going to back down from anybody, and I'm going to force their hand and make them make a decision. Are you going to redshirt me or not? I'm going to make you make that decision. I'm not going to make it for you. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. And I think that was well received with the coaching staff. I think the players that were already there appreciated it. A young kid that's going to come in and scrap and fight and run to the football on every snap, not take any plays off. And that's what did it for me. It was just all effort. I mean, I promise you, didn't know the scheme as well as the other guys out there, but nobody was going to outrun me. Nobody was going to outwork me. And that's what it takes. And if you've got an attitude that you'll go out there and outwork anybody, you can get anything done.
Grant Wistrom's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. Grant, 100 years being celebrated at Memorial Stadium, and a lot of changes, a lot of expansion, and you played in an incredible era. Is there a game or a moment in your career at Memorial Stadium that kind of makes your top couple? You've been to enough games as well, coming back to celebrate Nebraska. So I wanted to kind of get where a Grant Wistrom moment at Memorial Stadium. You're celebrating the 100th year.
That's a really easy question to answer because for my entire career, I never took the time, and even after I did it, never did it again, took the time to acknowledge the crowd, to not acknowledge, like wave at them, but just feel the crowd, feel the energy. So the game is Colorado our junior year in Memorial Stadium. And I wasn't sure if I was coming back for my senior year, and it was probably going to be the last home game. I thought it might be the last home game potentially that I would ever play there. So just making sure I soaked it all in, the crowd noise, the weather, the experience, everything I could, and just remember that, because it's such an important part of my life, and that place is such an important place to me. So it was a defensive battle. It was nasty out. We went out and we beat them. They were a good football team, and we beat them. But it was, it was more just about taking the time to be aware of how truly special that place is. And that's why that one stands out to me the most.
Grant, tell me, whenever you think of Memorial Stadium, where's the first place your mind goes? Not necessarily from a memory standpoint, but what it means to you. I think a lot of Husker fans have different memories from 100 years of Memorial Stadium, a lot of memories with loved ones, a lot of memories with families, the good times, the bad times. There's just a lot of things that place means, probably different to every single person out there that you'll ask. So what does Memorial Stadium mean to you in the grander scheme of your life?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. It's where I sharpen my teeth. I had a great foundation going to Nebraska, came from a really successful high school program, but still it's just going from a class 4A high school. If you're coming from a big school in Texas and you're going to Nebraska, it's not probably that big as a transition, but you're coming from a, medium, I graduated with 170 kids, small town in Missouri, and going to a place like Memorial Stadium, getting to play there and getting to be with the guys that I watched the year before play for a national championship, and then I'm holding hands in the huddle with them. To me, that was the first time I ever really felt like that, not that I'd arrived, but I did belong there. Like, I can do this, and that I've earned the respect of the coaches, my peers, and just being able to do it in such an amazing place. And at that time, too, that time in Nebraska football history, I think that's it. It just really helped me define who I was as a player, refined my mentality to the game and the approach to the game, and how you have to play the game at a high level to be successful.
Grant Wistrom's with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and when you look at Matt Rhule's career, just when it's atmosphere-wise, I mean, coaching at Temple, they play where the Eagles play. It's really not that full all the time. You go to Baylor, good atmosphere, obviously, Big 12 football, but stadium's not as big as Memorial Stadium. So how can Matt Rhule really utilize this home field advantage to his advantage, because he's never really had a crowd like this to coach in front of before?
Yeah, I don't think it'll take that long. You know, he's been around long enough. He's coached against it. He's probably been in pretty hostile environments before. He knows what they are. And if he doesn't, he's going to learn real fast. You know, opening kickoff, he'll figure it out what it's like at Memorial Stadium. But, I mean, he's a smart guy. He'll know how to manipulate that, help him out, and just do everything he can. You know, here I am. Just sounds like I'm sipping on the Kool-Aid. But he'll figure it out.
Well, I assume you're going with the cherry Kool-Aid, or are you a grape guy?
Yeah, I got to go red, go cherry Kool-Aid. Maybe, I don't know, do they have fruit punch? I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What are you doing with flavors? It's colors. You got red, you got purple, you got green.
I haven't made Kool-Aid for a while, all right?
It's been a minute since I had Kool-Aid, yeah.
Usually, you know, you go to someone's backyard party in college, there's 4,000 pounds of watermelon and other fruit in some giant trash can, and that was the punch, right, Grant?
Yep.
Okay, so last thought before we get you out, and thanks for this. So what's your reaction, and maybe it says a lot about me, but every bar I go into, it feels like there's a jersey of yours hanging up. And I say, oh, looky here, and I send you a picture. What's that do for you? You walk into a bar in Nebraska, and there's a Wistrom jersey hanging up.
It's freaking awesome. It's awesome. There's just no other way. Like, especially my kids don't think, they don't think I'm cool. They don't think I'm anything. And when we go back there and I can, we'll walk into a random place and, hey, and my son doesn't care at all. And my daughter likes to act like she doesn't care. But I make sure she sees it. And it's really cool that I know how special that place is to me, and I know what I gave to it, and I'd go back and do it all over again in a heartbeat if my body would allow me to do it. Eligibility rules would allow me to do it. But I know what it meant to me, and it's just nice to know that the feeling is reciprocal there, that, the fans there appreciated what we did, that they appreciated, me as a player, and I also think they appreciate probably a combination of person and player, because Nebraska's the type of place that, you're a good football player, that's nice, but if you're a good football player and a good human, then they're going to love you. And that's why I love Nebraska. It's they want the whole person there, and they want to know you, and they want you to be part of the community. And, and as long as you're a good person and you play hard, they're going to love you there. And just when you walk back in and you see the jerseys from 30 years ago, you're like, yeah, they do really love us here. And it means the world to me when and it does, my ego can use a bump every now and then these days. So yeah, it does bubble my head up a little bit, and I appreciate that. So keep them coming, Schmidt.
I love it. Well, it's hilarious. Grant's like, you always attend the finest establishments.
Yeah.
That's the response.
Most classy of places.
they let me in. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Grant, you take care, man, and best to you and your family. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Anytime, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Gotta love talking some Big Red Ball. Grant Wistrom, as good as it gets. At Grant Wistrom on Twitter. And yeah, the Wistrom jerseys everywhere, every bar you go to. That's awesome. Reminder to get buckled up. Seatbelts save lives, prevent injuries. Only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Tom Shatel joins us next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Tom Shatel joins us from the Omaha World Herald to talk some fall camp. You can find Tom on Twitter. Do so at Tom Shatel, OWH on Twitter. Of course, read him with the World Herald. Tom, so far so good. What do you think of the camp and the progress Nebraska's made?
Well, like what's going on outside the stadium. What construction. What a building. The guys and the new the construction people who are trying to finish the locker room and facility are trying to hurry up and do it, and I kind of get the feeling that Matt Rhule's trying to hurry up and do something too. It's just a time of camp where there's not a whole lot going on, and so, but that's good. And because every answer you get is about stuff that's not very exciting. It's about trying to teach these guys how to win, how to do things the right way. And today we talked about the freshman receivers, the young guys probably aren't going to play much early, and he didn't want to rush them. He wants them to. He says one of those. He said, "I love this quote about the Minnesota game being, it's a grown man's game," and so he wants the veterans out there. So that's kind of what we're talking about now, and I guess it'll go well.
Tom Shatel joins us, Hail Varsity Radio. I did love that quote. It is grown man, and the run game makes you grow up real quick if you're a defense or an offensive line. Is that a lean for you? I mean, it's been what's made Nebraska a really good team for years, but can it be revisited and re-amplified? Can the run game be good enough in 16 days?
Well, I don't know what they're going to be able to do in Minnesota. What my hope is that these guys, coaches have certainly been around and been together a lot, and they have talked about, we play to our strengths. We use the personnel, we mold the scheme and the offense around the players we have. So I think that's going to be what this year is all about. Question is, what's their strength on offense? My hunch is that it's going to be a run game. And that's what Marcus Setterfield said from day one, run the ball. I think that's what they're going to be good. They're probably going to be their strength. The receiver, they call it the receiver room now. I don't know when we started calling it the room, but the receiver position, the room, is it's kind of thin. And there's not a lot of experience there. And quite frankly, Jeff Sims has the interception issues in his past. Doesn't mean he's going to have them here. But if you look at it, I think the offensive line might be pretty good, or at least improved. Mm-hmm. And they got a couple of running backs, and they got a running quarterback. And I think you can pound it and throw to the tight ends. They're going to have some tight ends. I think that's the formula early. What that does is you make sure you get first downs. You keep your own defense off the field. And let them ease into things too. I don't know that defensive line is going to be ready for a lot of things early. So I don't know. My hunch is that I think the running game will be the strength. We'll have to show them to find out.
It's Tom Shatel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Tom, whenever you talk about the offense, I think we're all expecting it's going to take a couple of weeks for this offense to find its footing during the season. That's how coaching changes tend to go, and especially whenever you hit the transfer portal, as hard as that offense did, it's going to take some time for those guys to meld and come together as an offense. So let's talk about the defense a little bit, because you mentioned the defensive line. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on those guys through the first couple weeks of the season, particularly Minnesota and Colorado, that, hey, you're going to have to keep that offense out of the end zone, the opposing offense, I should say, out of the end zone, to give our offense a chance to go out there and make some plays. And, hey, if you guys get some turnovers, it's going to set up our offense with some short fields and give them a better chance. How much pressure do you think is going to be placed on that defense through the first couple of games of the season just to keep Nebraska in football games? I guess it's a question of how far away do you think the offense is going to be, and how much of that slack is the defense going to have to pick up?
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what the scheme is, although I'm not really fixated on scheme, and never have been, as much as other people do. Mm-hmm. I'm more about who are the dudes. Do they have any dudes? And they got a couple, but they need more. So I think they're going to be on their way. But this year, I think the first game, Minnesota's going to have a new quarterback. They'll be at home. They like to run the ball. I think that's, Nebraska's going to have to make sure that they don't get run over in that first game. They're able to stop them up front. The secondary has got a chance to be good with playmakers, but I don't know how many teams in the Big Ten are going to throw it at them, at least early. Minnesota probably won't. But, Colorado certainly is going to try. So I think it's going to go game to game. And, again, I think that the more the offense can help them, that's what I want to see out of his coaching staff is complementary parts where one helps the other. And I think defense is going to have good days and probably have days where they give up yards and maybe points. Guys, this season is going to be what we think it is. There's going to be good moments and some bad ones. And hopefully what I'd like to see is these guys coach things up and manage the team and the personnel to the 6-win area. We should go back to a bowl game. I think that's got to be the goal. So, but it's a pretty good schedule where they go on the road for the first two. They come back, they get their footing, and then here comes Jim Harbaugh, and that's an early game. But there's a week off in there, and I think there's a couple other games. Some games at home, I think they can win. So but they just can't turn the ball over. That'll really hurt the defense. The offense has to help the defense, I think.
Tom Shatel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And, Tom, I want to go back to that running back situation we were talking about just a moment ago. And, I mean, the clip came out yesterday on a look in about, Ramir Johnson running a couple of guys over in practice. And you talk about how running the ball is probably going to be the strength of this team. Do you sense that we will see some sort of combination of, say, a Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson, and Anthony Grant combo up in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think it'll be by committee, and as chairman of the board, I might be Jeff Sims. I think that's an ace in the hole that you could play, keep people honest, but also, you're throwing one running back after them every drive. You change it up, or every quarter. Then every once in a while, here comes that big quarterback running at you, and defenses have all defenses have a hard time with the quarterback running game, and it's just hard to stop. And especially if they use it like an off-speed pitch, I really think that's going to be the key. I don't see this. You've got to throw downfield to keep them honest. I don't really see this as a air offense at all. I think this is going to be, I think the strength will be on the ground and with the occasional tight end. But I also think, look, I'm probably going to write this later in the week. Nebraska is not going to be back until the offensive line is back up to speed where it was before Frank Solich got fired. It's way, way, way back there for some of us. But they need to get back to the pipeline and get that thing to where they've got continuity, they've got dudes, they're physical, they're athletic. They don't necessarily have to be tall or, but just guys who are going to move people around. And that's the heart and soul of Nebraska football. And I really think what we've seen the last 20-some years is offensive coordinators and head coaches who really didn't put a priority on it, and they did the offensive line a disservice because they did not put physical in practice. And you can't be physical offensive line unless you're doing it all the time. And I think a running scheme helps you do that in practice and also win the games.
Tom, we'll get you out on this, and thank you for your time. I really enjoyed your column about years that end in 3, right? It's 2023, and you talked about going back to 63 with Coach Devaney bursting onto the scene, T.O.'s first year 50 years ago, the scoring explosion, kind of the resurgence in 93 with that unbeaten year, Frank's final year in 03, and then the is he back or not with Bo in 2013. So I'm sure you've got the crystal ball out for what the hell 2023 is going to look like.
Well, I don't think it'll be, the last two were sort of negatives for the program.
Yeah.
I don't see how this season can be anything negative. It's down about as far as it's going to go. I don't know how that could get any worse. And I certainly expect them to get coached up. I think they're going to get back to common sense Nebraska football. And they're going to look like a coach and a team. And I think it'll be back to normal a little bit there. I don't know how many wins that means. But I think if there's everything on 3 has been memorable. And I really, the more I looked at it, I thought, this is weird. I kept thinking, okay, what was 13? And I remembered the Bopelini tape was released. They lost to UCLA. Frazier called for him to be fired. It was a circus early. After the Iowa game, he challenged Eichhorst, and it was just a bizarre. It really was sort of the beginning of the end for him. But I think for 23, I think they're going to go to a bowl, and I think they're going to be coached up, and I think there's going to be they're going to learn how to win a few games. So it'll be a real subtle sort of thing. It won't be very sexy, but I think there's going to be the return of good football, and I think the return of learning how to win. So that's my prediction for 23.
Well, Tom, I think ending the bowlless streak could be memorable in its own right for a lot of Husker fans.
Yeah, I forgot. I've forgotten what it's like to travel that time of year. So,
Tommy, take care. We'll see you soon. Thanks for a few minutes.
Hey guys, thanks.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down to Tuesday. Good stuff from Tom Shatel, Grant Wistrom in this second hour. Thanks to Mitch Sherman. And then Jeff Larson checking in with Lincoln East as Carpet Land tries for the American Legion National Championship. 6 o'clock ESPNU. There's a few watch parties going on for that around the capital city. We'll get back to Coach Rhule and some final thoughts from him after practice today. And guys, we've talked about it with Tom Shatel, did so also with Mitch Sherman. And let's go here before we hear from Rhule. Are you confident or just kind of cautiously optimistic? Like Grant was saying, he's cautiously optimistic about the season. But red zone-wise, do you think it's going to be better or worse than it's been? And if you had to give red zone a grade, probably during the Frost era, it was problematic. They were not strong enough to run the football when they had to run the football inside the 10, inside the 5. Adrian early in a game would get in, but then, all we got to think of is that Minnesota game where you're about to seize momentum and you can't find your way in the end zone. You didn't have a run game to get it done. A year ago, what was it? It was big plays to Trey. Okay? And you'd use Casey Thompson in the red zone on the quarterback keeper. You used Chubba Purdy against Minnesota or Illinois, and you just didn't have a bread and butter. I absolutely believe Nebraska, from a tone-setting, intimidation, attitude, let's send a message, they're going to go 2 or 3 tight end I formation and try and slam it down your throat. They've not been able to do that for years.
Well, you think back, the 2021 season was the closest they had to that. I remember they'd always bring in Chancellor Brewington on the goal line. He'd go in motion
kick out and wham block you.
Yeah, he'd absolutely go kill somebody on the edge and leave a hole you could drive a Mack truck through for whichever running back or quarterback was back there running the football. But whenever I think back as a whole of the Scott Frost era, the only red zone offense I can think of my life that was worse to watch was the 2022 Denver Broncos. So it's onward and upward.
That's
only.
A nice comp
Yikes.
for you. Now, 18, they were all right once they got Ziggy going.
Once they got Ziggy going, yeah, and that's what it came down to. Both of those times, it's can you find a rushing attack inside the 20? You could with Brewington and some motion that you did, as well as running Adrian back in 21. Then back in 18, you're able to go to Divine Azigbo and his ability between the tackles to make something happen, make somebody miss. But as Donald chimes in here, all I have right now is hope. And that's kind of what it feels like whenever we talk about the red zone is, well, I don't think you can get much worse, can you? Like, is it going to be better in 2023? I don't think you can go down. You can hope. I don't think you can go down because of how bad it's been the past couple of years.
Listen, you're going to have that option. You're going to have a fullback, presumably. You're going to have an I-back, Gabe Irvin. You're going to have a 6'4", 230-pound quarterback in Sims. You're going to have Fedoni at tight end. You're going to have options to throw it or run it in and go some play action. Give me all these spider 2Y bananas you want or need with play action, a little run pass option, then find the fullback sneaking out of the backfield in the goal line. You can still be physical and throw the football, but it'd be really cool if you're a Nebraska fan to see him get downhill and just mash it in.
Well, think about like the options you're going to have whenever you go to that jumbo package. 2 tight ends, a fullback in the football game. Like
I think you'll see Harburg in some Tim Tebow type packages.
Yeah, whenever you combine all that, like the amount of size you can get on the field, are you able to go mano-a-mano? You're 8 guys, you're 5 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, and 1 fullback. Are you able to go mano-a-mano, put a hat on a hat, and take out the 8 guys in the box and get yourself 2 yards of push? Like that's going to be the question to me, and I think that's going to be a wait-and-see mode in terms of can the red zone offense be better? Well, let's see what they do against Minnesota, and that's the easy answer to say here is, well, it's going to show itself on the field, but it's really true here is it's not anything fancy with scheme-wise. No. I think that's going to open up Nebraska in the red zone. It's not going to be like what they tried to do under Frost, and wow, we're going to send some guys in motion, and we're going to have a whole bunch of different nuanced options of certain plays. No, it's going to be mano-a-mano, physical. We're going to put a hat on a hat and see what you can do about it. And can Nebraska do that? We'll see what those 5 offensive linemen can do. We'll see what the tight ends can do from a blocking point of view. Bonner or Liebentritt or whoever is going to play fullback, are you able to go put a hat on a hat, get a couple yards of push, and be able to push the pile into the end zone? That's the question.
Can we hear from Coach Rhule, on the red zone, and how has that red zone offense been so far in camp?
We've had some good moments, some bad moments. Our defense is pretty difficult in the red zone with what they allow you to do, with the way that they play. And I've been pleased with the way we've run the ball through the red zone. Our creativity has been pretty good. So I think we're right where we need to be. I mean, I'm always looking for big receivers, and I think down in that area. So I think guys like Malachi, Marcus, we're still waiting for Marcus Washington to come back. He's close. I expect him any day now. But those are the kind of guys I think can help you down there. Fedoni can help you down there, some of those guys. So, we want to score touchdowns, not field goals. So that's our whole mindset. And I like the way we're proceeding. The quarterbacks get a lot of work down there, and they're doing a good job managing that situation down there because it's completely different for a quarterback.
What scares me just a little bit was a minor thing you threw in there. Our creativity has been good down there. Whenever you think of Big Ten offenses in the red zone, I don't think of Big Ten offenses being cutting-edge creativity.
What I think he means by creativity is having that extra element. I think creativity means quarterback run option. I think that's
worked well for you over the past couple of years.
It's been the only thing that has worked in the red zone, to be honest. More from Rhule here on that aggressiveness. How aggressive are you in the red zone? And just to me, it's not about aggressiveness or being conservative. Can you execute? To your point about just being able to go move somebody a couple of feet off the ball.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to the quarterback play, right? For me, we divide the red zone up into sort of a high red zone area where if you take a sack, you're out of field goal range. So quarterback has to be really cognizant down there about kind of having a sniper's mentality of touchdown, check down, not scrambling around and taking sacks. And then as we get down through the low red, understanding where to throw the football. We're going to throw the ball the front pylon low, back line high, and there the quarterback can scramble around because a sack won't knock him out of field goal range. So, sort of all the nuances that we teach, maybe are a little bit new to some of the quarterbacks in terms of hearing them, but we get enough reps down there that they're doing a good job. And, I'm always going to try to run the ball in first. There's nothing more demoralizing on defense than having someone run a touchdown in. It's one thing to get tricked. I played for Coach Paterno. If someone ran a trick play against us and scored a touchdown in the game, he'd expect us to laugh, like, hey, they know they're not good enough to beat us. So we don't worry about things like that. But when someone runs the ball in, or when we run the ball in, it's demoralizing. So we'll start there, but we're going to turn Jeff loose. We trust him. We're going to let him go play.
Do we have time for the freshman wideouts? Cut 10? Or are we up against it?
We're up against it with that one.
That's a pretty telling quote coming up from Rhule. So a couple more thoughts for Rhule to finish here on Hail Varsity Radio. So be sure to get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the interviews, good stuff from Grant Wistrom today. And Tom Shatel also just fantastic to sit down with Mitch Sherman. And then proud Lincoln East parent is Lincoln East going for the Legion World Series title, the Natty. They're out in North Carolina. Jeff Larson's been with us. We'll wind it down. Hail Varsity continues, and we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out one final time. Hail Varsity Radio. Tomorrow, Mike Babcock going to be with us, Evan Bland, and plenty of time for you. So, some inquiry here. What's going on with Malachi Coleman? How much usage will he and the other freshmen get? That's been a popular question in the stream inbox. Here is Coach Rhule, and didn't douse any freshmen's hopes, but you don't want to throw guys in before they're ready. Here is Coach Rhule on freshman wideouts and freshman options.
I'm giving them all an opportunity to play. I don't know that we need any of the freshmen to play at wideout. We'd love to have them play if they're ready, but the older guys know how to play. You know, that first game, the team we're playing, that's gonna be a grown man game. You know, they play real football. You know, if I told our older guys, you guys want to win, you know, you better see a bunch of veteran players out there on special teams. You know, you can't subcontract out winning to young players. Now, some young players will be ready, some won't. What you're hoping is that we're just going to give our guys chances to get reps and play. And if they're ready, they're ready. If they're not, they're not. Because otherwise, you know, the freshmen, they'll start to put a ton of pressure on themselves, and they'll start, you know, they can't sleep at night because they're so worried about making a mistake. And this is a game of mistakes, you know what I mean? So the older guys have figured that out. So if Malachi's ready, great. If not, he's going to be a great player here. He's an amazing young man with what things he's done and overcome in his life. If he's ready, great. If you know, Jalen Lloyd's ready, great. If Jeremiah or Jaden's ready, great. But you know, the older guys are the ones who will lead us through, and I think one or two of those guys will step up. I really do, and be ready. And maybe it's game 6, maybe it's game 7. You know, the new rule now: you can play 4 games plus the postseason. So hopefully these guys get to play five or so games and go from there.
We'll hear more from Thomas Fidone tomorrow. Didn't have quite time to get to it, but last thought from Rhule on Fidone and just his progression, because he's going to could be pretty big time for this Nebraska offense as we keep the red zone theme.
You know, I know Thomas tore his ACL the first time. You know, he took just kind of a really unfortunate low shot to his knee. It wasn't like the knee gave out. I mean, it's one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen, you know, and just took a hit to the knee last year. So, I mean, I think anybody would have blown it out. So, I think for him, he's done such a good job rehabbing that I don't notice any difference. You know, I mean, you know, he timed him in the summer at 255. He was low 4.5s. I mean, he's a freak athlete. He's probably as hard on himself as I am on myself. So we have a lot in common in that regard. But what I'm seeing from him is, you know, if he has a bad play or makes a mistake while he's still angry with himself, he's starting to quickly say what's next and get over it. And he's made some plays at the end of practices in the 2-minute down in the red zone, to Sam's point. He's made some plays down there to win scrimmages for us or team periods. So I'm really happy with where he's coming. He's in there every day with the coaches working to get better. He wants to be here, and I think he will be.
Well said on Fidone. Anxious to watch him, man. I mean, it's going to be...
Been waiting for a while.
Right. You've been waiting for a while, and you look at his size and speed and athleticism. As Mitch put it, he eats footballs for dinner, right? And I go back to Dumb and Dumber, that cinema classic where, you know, Ray Finkel's mom is baking cookies that are a football, but their lace is out.
Yes.
And when I think of eating footballs for dinner, I think of Ray Finkel's mom and how she threw Dan Marino, my favorite quarterback, under the bus. What was the quote? I hope Dan Marino dies of gonorrhea. You haven't seen Dumb and Dumber.
I have. I'm missing these references, though.
Do you remember when Ace Ventura shows up and it's, all of a sudden it's Ray's dad with a shotgun?
Yeah. Okay.
One hell of a model American.
I need to rewatch the movie.
Yeah, rewatch it because they're little footballs.
See, is that a classic scene? I know the classic scenes.
No, it's hemorrhoids. All right, back at 4 tomorrow. Thanks.